Hello, welcome once again to Pale Blooms and Beyond. Thank you for joining us today. Joe and Bing were a contemporary pop folk duo who released a couple of albums in the 1970s. The debut album from 1971, Daybreak, was released and re-released under Joe and Bing, Best of Friends, and Eumir, Deodato, and Best of Friends. Confused? We'll get to the bottom of it, as well as clarifying the noted Brazilian composer's involvement. Joe Knowlton, vocals, guitar, and William Bingham, vocals, guitar, originally met in school as teens. After dropping out of college and a 4-year stint in the military, the duo traveled to New York to record what would be the album Daybreak. A second album, simply titled Joe and Bing, was released in 1976. We will see what Joe and Bing have been up to since, including jingle writing, acting, and teaching. Well, welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to clarify one thing already. We didn't exactly drop out of college. We were kicked out of college after our freshman year. And we eventually went back and completed college, but it was not our decision to leave college.
No, Joey, we dropped out. We both went in the Army. Joey came back a year before I did, and then when we got back to Williams College, we reunited and continued to make music while we also paid attention to our studies.
Yeah, that's really when we sort of got started. Collaborating was actually after our military service when we reconvened at college.
Right.
We came back to college and graduated with, honors and flourishes, and they were good enough to re-accept us, which was good.
In a very selective and difficult school to get into. Me personally, I don't think I'd have a chance to get into Williams College today.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's how we reconvened, and it wasn't long before we had Daybreak.
Yeah. Well, let's go back. I want to start from go back to the beginning, actually. Who wants to talk about their childhood first?
Well, I think we probably both have interesting childhoods. My father was in the Army, so we traveled. We moved almost every year. But I think the longest we ever lived anywhere was 3 years.
Okay.
One of those 3-year stints was England. We went over there when I was 11, and I was convinced that, I was missing out on my entire life because, just sort of my understanding of what was happening in the United States. People, going to parties and, doing the twist and. Anyway, but so I was an expatriate for those 3 years. And when I came back, I got into the Taft School, which is a private school in Connecticut, which is actually where I met Bing, and he'll talk about his experience. But I'll leave it to you. Can jump in now and talk about.
Sure. I mean, the cool thing was that Joey's dad and my dad both went to West Point, and they were two years apart from West Point.
Okay.
And they, I presume they knew each other, but flash forward all these years forward, I had the same kind of upbringing that Joey did, except in the Air Force, Army Air Force first, and then Air Force. Every 3 years, moving from one base to another base, living in exotic places like North Africa and Alaska and Guam and all these other places. And ending up in Guam as a junior, he'd been there as a sophomore, and at Taft School in Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget, I was in my room feeling, very new and a little intimidated by being in a new school. And this guy walks in, and within 15 minutes, we discovered we were guitar players and that we had the same interest in folk rock and folk music. And literally, we started playing guitars and singing and eventually writing songs and so on at Taft School.
So, okay.
Were you?
Were you both self-taught on the guitar? Both of
Yeah,
you?
Yeah, I think we both, but yes, exactly. We both are self-taught.
Okay.
Somewhere along the line, we both have had some, musical education, but I think in honesty, we're both self-taught.
Yeah, when we were living in England for Christmas, my aunt and uncle gave me a Kingston Trio album.
Okay.
I listened to that and it grabbed me by the ears, and I just thought this is the greatest thing that's ever happened. So I just started, I made my parents buy me a guitar, which I think at that point cost $14. And I just started trying to replicate what I was hearing. But they also had a Burl Ives. I don't know who remembers Burl Ives, but
Oh, yeah, I do.
I mean, let's not remember him for Holly Jolly Christmas. He was a
Right.
wonderful folk singer.
Folk
And
singer.
my parents had these albums of him, just him and his guitar playing at the Royal Albert Hall in London. And I just love the whole sound and the sense of one guy on a guitar captivating an entire audience, and I just love that. And then when I got to Taft, I found a book that had guitar chords in it with some of the songs that he did, and I was able to figure out how to play the chords that replicated what he was doing. That's when I started making the connection. I
Okay.
can do this, I can play an E minor chord, and just like Burl.
We played other instruments as well. I mean, Joe had a 5-string banjo. I also played bass. And we were able to, put together a pretty kind of, and we had a third classmate at Taft. His name was Tony Howe, who joined us as a trio. And we actually had our first professional gig when we were, 11th and 12th graders in high school. And we'd go, I think we'd play at a country club or something like and do a session of songs, and they pay us $25 or something. I actually have a book, literally, that goes all the way back to Taft and goes back to our high school years when, we had that kind of officializes our gigs that we first played back then.
Is that right? Well, what about you? What about you, Bing? Can you remember an early 45 single or album that you got or someone got for you?
Well, that's interesting. My first guitar was when I lived in Tangier, Morocco, as a 6, 7, and 8-year-old. My dad was stationed there, and they got me this nylon string Spanish guitar, and that's what started my guitar playing. That's what started, which I never gave up at that point. I had a little bit of. We moved back to the States. I had a year of piano lessons. That's my only formal training, I guess you could say. I guess we did back in those days, the music was, Ricky Nelson and of course, starting in 1960, 61, when I was still living in Alaska with my parents, it was the Kingston Trio, and it was the Journeymen, and the Limelighters, and all these amazing folk groups that were the major influences for me, and I think Joey as well.
Well, yeah, and in the early '60s, folk music was the popular music that you heard on the radio. I mean, I don't know how long that era lasted, maybe 3 years, 2 years. But when you turned on the radio, you heard the Highwaymen and the These Men and the Those Men. So that was kind of a huge influence on us. And I'll never forget, we were in Georgetown visiting somebody, I think, and we were down on M Street. I'm trying to remember the name of the place, but we went in there and it was kind of like open mic night, and there was a folk group playing there. We thought, what, we can kick these guys' butts. So we borrowed their instruments, and did 3 songs and brought the house down. I just thought,
there's something there, right? There's something there.
You mentioned Limelighters. I remember my dad had a couple of their albums.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great, but there was just 1,000 folk groups.
Right.
Well, the Highwaymen, the Kingston Trio, the
Journeyman was my favorite.
Well, the Journeyman, and that's, interestingly enough, that was John Phillips, who subsequently
and Scott McKenzie, who came on, who had a solo career as well. Produced by this Frank Weber, who produced the Kingston Trio, And their sound was just like unlike any other
Yeah.
sound.
Yeah.
And I just remember being mesmerized.
Yeah, we were
by it.
sort of drawn to them because they took sort of Kingston Trio style stuff and raised it to,
Another level,
it was,
a whole other level.
it was,
Yeah.
I mean,
And that to me, from in terms of their production and their harmonies and everything, just kind of launched me personally, and maybe Joey too, as well, into from folk music into just a more
no,
contemporary
I think
sound.
we were definitely influenced by what they were doing
Yeah.
with folk music. They were making it not more jazzy, but more
Well,
harmonically,
Right.
interesting.
heading into more folk kind of contemporary.
Contemporary, yes, yes. Well, can you remember, did you see any of these artist groups in concert or at any gigs? Did you?
Oh, I saw the Kingston Trio a couple of
Well,
times.
you and I both saw
Peter,
them.
Paul, and Mary. I
Peter, Paul, and
remember
Mary,
going to see them. I never saw the Journeyman.
No, I don't think the Journeyman actually, I mean, they did tour. They did a huge college concert tour with all college audiences when they were first, kind of getting established, but they didn't last very long. The Journeyman was rather, their career was short.
They did through that. I have a Mamas and the Papas story that I'll inject later
Okay,
logically, but
all right, that sounds good. The trio that you were talking about earlier at Taft, was that the Coachman?
Coachman.
Yeah,
Okay, okay.
with a classmate whose name was Tony Howe.
Anyhow,
Mhm.
and actually Taft kind of, I think, put us out there. They
Launched us.
hired us for a lot of alumni events and
Well, we
School
sang at our graduation. We have a full page ad in our yearbook. Taft was, it was also the time of the Beatles. And when the Beatles launched, we were at Taft, and so we were doing Beatles songs
Yeah.
as well. But I would say that if the class of '64 at Taft School had a soundtrack, we were very much a part of it.
And actually, speaking of great memories for adolescent boys, my
Uh-huh.
cousin Margot went to the Madera School in McLean, Virginia. And
Okay.
she essentially created an opportunity for us to come down and sing for them
Mhm.
for an all-girls school, and we were 17,
Okay.
whatever, in that age range. And it was amazing, I mean, like, we were standing up surrounded by,
Young, beautiful girls. And
And there
actually, we
was-
went back twice. I
Well,
mean, they
they-
asked us back another day.
Yeah, I think we went on the weekend, and a group of girls heard so much about our first show that the second we went back, and it was like being in heaven if you were, again, a 17-year-old boy. I think that's when I decided I wanted to keep doing this.
Yeah.
We
That's
did a couple
interesting.
Beatles songs,
Yeah.
and the girls would all scream at the right.
I was going to ask you
Yeah.
about that, the difference between playing at Taft and playing at the all-girls school. But you answered that one.
Yeah, there was an additional sort of element. of
And
it.
that wasn't the only girls' school we played.
Oh,
to. I mean,
no.
we actually got around quite a bit when we were at Taft.
Yeah.
And even more so when we went to Williams. We
Yeah.
actually concerted all over the place, a lot of different schools. Especially when the White Album came out.
Oh, okay.
Our White Album.
Yeah.
Which,
Right. Right.
yeah, okay.
Yeah. Well, early on, describe the songwriting process between the two of you.
Great question. We wrote our first songs at Taft, with no question about it. I came out of the Army with a couple of songs that we started working on, and eventually became songs that were part of our very first album, the White Album, that our producers George Clavin and Harry Lukowski and Eumir Deodato printed 1,500 copies of this record my sophomore year. And Joey and I had these records that we would go for, on concerts all over the place and literally hand them out. And
Okay.
and every once in a while, I mean, years ago, an original copy of this record would show up somewhere, and it showed up on YouTube a couple of times, and I think it sold at one point for $2,000. one of these original copies of this record that was released when we were at Williams, went for that much money.
Yeah, we're still waiting for the royalties from that.
Yeah, well,
But to answer your question, Bing
Yeah.
generally would have the musical idea for a song. I mean,
Uh-huh.
when we sat down to do a song, Bing would have the musical theme and when we started doing this. And I would generally, my contribution would be mostly lyrical,
Yeah.
So, and I remember writing the first, what has become our signature song, Daybreak, Walking Out on Yesterday.
Right.
I remember writing that in your kitchen
not only in my kitchen, but before I went back to college, Joey got back to Williams a year before I did. And I remember my parents had this farmhouse in Dutchess County, New York. And I remember sitting by the phone and doing this to Joey. And giving that much to him on the phone. And then you call me back like, I don't know, 2 or 3 days later, and I've got. And Joey wrote these amazing lyrics to this melody. And that's how Daybreak was born. It was born, we were a phone call apart.
It's like Gilbert and Sullivan.
But yeah, you're right.
Right.
He also did some songwriting in my parents'
Yeah, we did.
farmhouse
I
in the
mean-
kitchen. He would come down from Williams.
Uh-huh.
Again, this is before I got back there, and we would songwrite. So a lot of our early songs were written that way.
Yeah, but that was, again, typically the modus operandi. Bing would provide the music, and I would attempt to put some lyrics.
You would work on the lyrics. We'll talk about, Joe, about meeting up with a graduate from Taft, who would be that connection that would ultimately lead to the recording of the album.
Well, okay, actually, at Taft, we sat in the auditoriums alphabetically,
Mhm.
and I sat next to a guy named George Claben, KL, and I was KN. And I spent most of my time at Taft knocking his elbow off the armpit. Anyway, he subsequently, after Taft, teamed up with Harry Lakofsky, who was a session violin player, whose son, Mike Brown, was the founding member of the Left Bank and who wrote Walk Away Renee and
Yeah.
that whole thing. But so we somehow sort of like found out about them, and they had a recording studio at 1595 Broadway in those days.
In the very famous.
Yeah, which is near the
What's
Brill
that?
building, but it was
Well-
like in the,
I thought it was in the Brill.
well, it wasn't in the building, it was very close to it, and in the 50s, the high 40s. So we went in there to record some demos.
Yeah.
And we recorded, I guess, this one and
Daybreak.
Loves and Season and Summer Sound.
Summer Sound.
And
Maybe
one
Fail.
of the session guys, the bass player, I think Russell George. We had Grady Tate, a great jazz drummer, played on one of these things. But the bass player knew a producer in Brazil, a record producer. And apparently he sent these demos down to this guy. And he
Okay.
was interested enough,
Remember that.
Roberto Portine.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, basically what happened is, and my memory is
Well,
slightly different.
and he was interested enough to ask us to do a whole
I
album.
just remember us coming in, playing Daybreak to George, for George. And while we were there, he got on the phone and he called his partner, Harry Lakofsky, who
Mhm.
together owned Sound Idea Studio. Harry came in, and this was late at night. We'd driven down from Williams College and listened to what we were doing. And basically, again, the timeline of this is a little hazy, but basically they told us they were interested in doing a record with us and producing us as producers. That led to, as Joey said, us meeting Eumir Deodato and a number of like iconic musicians who played on that first record of ours. I mean, they're just all seriously famous guys. And so the long story short, we made numerous trips from Williams, 3.5 hours
Oh, yeah,
down,
we were always driving down.
driving in the middle of the night down to these studio sessions to get
Uh-huh.
that first record done. And just skipping ahead, long story short, was that, as Joey said, George Claben, who our classmate was, had connections in Brazil. They couldn't, they were not able to get us a deal in the US, but they were able to get us a deal in Brazil. And so Quartine Records, which was owned by Roberto Quartine, somebody George knew, produced our very first record commercially in Brazil with those songs on it, and that's how that happened.
Okay. Well, talk about the recording sessions. In particular, how was it working with Mr. Deodato?
I just remember this young guy coming into the studio one day, and he was, you know, I go, how old was Eumir at that point? Long hair and so on. And he was very cool, and he came in, and he absolutely, I just remember being dazzled by his talent, because you know, we were playing songs for him like Love's in Season, and he was just writing down as the song was being played. He was just writing the melody down as it was being played. And I just remember like, holy crap, you know. and we were, you know, we made quick friends, and the next thing we know, he went away. And I don't think, did we ever get, I don't think I ever was there when they did strings and horns.
No, I don't think we ever did.
We were up at school, so he wrote string arrangements to 4 songs, and that's how that all happened. And we've been lifelong friends since then, and still are today. I mean, if I have a music mentor, it's Eumir Deodato.
And it would be amazing to me to come down and hear, you know, basically the overdubs, you know, to our demos with strings and bass and everything. And that to me was the revelation, was hearing what these session musicians, for the most part, could do. You know, we had like jazz guitar. Joe Beck played on some of this stuff.
Amazing musician.
Who was the guy? Kenny Asher, who
yeah.
co-wrote the Rainbow Connection. He came in and played on a couple of songs.
Right.
And actually, at this point, one of the engineers at Sound Ideas was Jeff Daking, who had been the drummer for the Blues Magoos. Remember them?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So,
and later became great friends and much closer.
oh yeah, I mean,
when I was doing jingles in New York.
But you know, I mean, really, these really great players, and like I said, Grady Tate, great jazz drummer, and it was it's fun. Jeff Daking, you know, did a mix on one of our songs, and all you could hear were the drums.
Really?
Lots of drums, and back there somewhere it's Joe and Bing singing, you know. But yeah, that was cool. Just hearing what really good guys, you know, what a really good musician could
It
do.
was really awakening for me too, especially as a songwriter and musician, to listen to these guys, because they were so good. They were so amazing. And the fact that Joe and I recorded these songs with no click, there was no click.
No click track.
You know, we were recording them to our time.
Yeah.
And these guys were doing the back vocals. I mean, not vocals, but doing the backup instruments to our time. And if you listen to the record, everything sounds pretty cool. But I mean, that was very unusual.
And actually at Daybreak, the recording was done to our original demo.
That's right.
Because we tried re-recording it subsequently to a click track, and it just didn't have the same, whatever,
the same
je ne sais quoi. So, you know, I mean, the tempo was okay, but it wasn't like rock solid the way, you know, you like to do.
I think the song that you hear, that becomes the most evident of all is Sail. If you listen to Sail, and listen very carefully to the drums and the bass, you can hear them just
having to chase us around.
Just a little bit of that song. It's okay. It works. It all works. But I mean, that's a tough song, and that had a bossa nova beat and everything else. So yeah.
And a note to that song in particular, we basically wrote that song driving in Bing's. At that point, he had a Corvette. We wrote that song while we were driving somewhere in the car. Yeah, I totally remember that, and how uncomfortable I was.
I like that, what you said about no click track. It's almost more of a organic way of recording. Yeah. I think sometimes the click track can be a little too mechanical. Maybe.
Yeah, when you're, you know, again, I subsequently, when I would write, I had a little jingle business, and I would be doing everything on the computer. It actually sounded better if you left in a lot of your mistakes, and you know, sort of gave the click track kind of a leeway to kind of spray back and forth. There's nothing more uninteresting than hearing something that's
right. Well, talking about, you mentioned a couple of the tracks that are my favorites. If Love's in Season is definitely my top pick.
Written that while
Yeah.
you were.
I was in the army when I
Before we
wrote
got back
that,
together.
Mhm. Yeah. And then Daybreak, is also a really nice track as well.
Thank you.
Actually, Esther Gilberto recorded that on one of her albums.
Yeah, she did. And we were in the session, we did background vocals to it.
Yeah, okay, okay. Now on my CD, the copy I have, there's an extra track that's also very nice. It wasn't on the original album, More Than I Can Live With.
Yeah, that's Joey's song.
Okay, okay.
That-
Was
that-
why was that not on the original album?
Oh, no, More Than I Can Live With is,
what's that?
no, More Like
Oh,
It,
oh, no.
That's More Than I Can Live With. That
Oh,
was,
no,
that was a demo.
that was a
we did.
demo. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
Oh,
was,
demo, okay, okay.
yeah. Thank you
That
for
actually never got released. It was just,
No, that was never released.
we
and it
had
was-
that and we put it on the Mapache.
Well, when
album.
we, not on the album
Is that
from
on?
England, Daybreak album from Red,
Oh, Cherry Red?
Cherry Red,
really?
yeah.
Okay.
So what happened with that was that this producer, or this guy from, Christ, I remember with the publishing company, big publishing company, tracked down Joe and me.
Oh, Darcy,
Dar-
Keith Darcy.
Keith Darcy,
Yeah.
right, who works for one of the big music publishing
Sony, I
companies.
think, maybe.
Sony, I think, yeah.
Something.
He contacted
them.
us around 2000, I'm guessing around 2002, 2003, and said he'd been looking for us for 10 years. And long story short, he took a train out of New York and went up to Joe's place, which was in Katona, and I was living in North Salem at the time, and we met him. And the result of all of that meeting was this release of this CD, which basically was the Daybreak album plus some bonus tracks. And that's where the song you mentioned was
Mhm.
added to it, because we had these bonus tracks. And sometimes we had to do a little work on them, and in Pro Tools and so on to get them right.
Yeah.
Well, I hadn't thought of that song in forever.
We had a long time. That's right. That was a song we did.
On a night
as a-
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. That's wonderful. It's a great
It's a
song.
nice song, yeah.
We
Well,
it was
Yeah,
never
it didn't,
released. That
it
song-
didn't sound like a demo to me, at least.
it was. I don't think we ever.
It was a song, it was a demo in a sense that we did at Sound Ideas with George, George Clavin engineering and so on. So it was a very good demo.
Yeah.
In a few cases, we had to do just a few little magical things on Pro Tools to make it all work. But basically, that demo was pretty much intact. And this was just songs that we had on tapes. And we wanted to put extra songs on the Cherry Red record, which was released in England and got quite a bit of attention. And so, yeah, that was one of the songs that was put on there.
Yeah, the Cherry Red's really good. I've got to give a plug for them about re-releasing a lot of this,
Yeah, they had lots of nice things to say about the record.
Yeah, we're still in touch with them, and we don't have an active deal with them anymore, but we still get royalties from them. And yeah, we had a great relationship with them.
Yeah. I picked up quite a few CDs from Cherry Red, and also the various artist compilations that they do are really nice too.
Yeah.
Good liner notes, real thorough. And that's how I find out about a lot of artists too. A lot of these obscured artists is through their releases. So do you think we've sorted out the confusion about the the albums and who they were credited to?
Yeah.
Well, we had a number of releases. I mean, it happened almost every couple of years. We would get interest from North Korea, not North Korea, from Korea, South Korea.
Yeah, we're big in North Korea.
We did. Yeah,
I was gonna say that would be something.
they did.
Gone
We had a
viral.
CD released in South Korea because they called us up. I forget what's the name of that label.
Big Pink.
Big Pink label, right? South Korea.
Okay.
My goodness. What else, Joey? There was another.
Well, there was that one, the Italian one, which was basically our record, but it had Eumir's picture on it. It was like.
Oh,
Eumir
that was much earlier.
Yeah, Eumir Deodato.
I mean, the
Black
most-
Horse was at the label.
Yeah, Black Horse. Well, yeah, there was Black Horse Records, and that was much earlier. I gotta tell you, our most recent deal was with Mapache Records, Mapache in Spain. And
Okay.
these guys were terrific. And the guy, Daniel Wassine, who is the producer there and the owner of the record company, asked for a new edition of our Daybreak record, a new mix of it, which we did, and
Mhm.
sent him a brand new mix of that, and just a
It was remastered.
remastered, I'm sorry, yes, a
Because-
remastered mix of Daybreak. And these guys released a beautiful a replica of our very first White Album, we call the White Album, right?
Mhm.
That 1500 thing, with
Yeah.
new pictures of
Right.
Joey and me, and each of us wrote a full page of our recollections of the recording of that album separately. We did it separately, then they put it together. It was beautifully done, and I was just in conversations with them on email just a week ago. And so they're releasing a compilation album of their other artists in April that we will be on. But Apache was interesting because that record company released Daybreak in Europe, and actually technically our first release in the USA through Light in the Attic Records, which is a basically a distributor in Northeast, either I guess it's my gosh, where Seattle, maybe they were based in Seattle. You can look them up, Light in the Attic record. And so it was kind of cool because technically speaking, it was the first time that Daybreak was actually released in the US. And this was 4 years ago.
About 4 years. Yes.
And we've had a great relationship with Mapache Records. And so technically right now it's come to an end. I'm waiting for, he's going to send me back another 7 or 8 to 10 copies of this beautiful, beautiful replica they did of our very first record. And he's holding on to the, I just had a conversation with him 2 days ago. He's holding on to the master because he's hoping that there'll be another release down the road. That's where we are right
Oh, okay.
And what was great about that was that they remastered, how much better that album sounded.
now. Actually, it
Then
was
the Brazil-
remastered here. It was remastered
Well,
here.
but the Brazil album was mastered horribly.
Yeah,
It sounded terrible.
yeah, it was not good.
So it was nice to hear what somebody that knew what they were doing did.
This was
Speaking-
remastered in a
There
studio.
we go.
Ah, yes. See, that's what I like.
And
Yeah,
that's a way of
to have-
knowledge.
What is that, Joey?
This is a note the bell bottoms and if I. I mean, this was the picture. It was basically Betsy Hubner, who was the wife of one of our roommates, did the sketch for what we're calling the White Album. I don't know,
Right.
are you, when we say White Album, you know what we're talking about? Yeah,
Right.
okay, so anyway, this is what she used
Uh-huh.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love this picture. If I had these pants, I could rule the world.
Joey has a 6 by 8 foot poster of that in his bedroom.
That's right. I look at that and just say, boy, you're so hot.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny.
I don't know.
Oh, God. Well, probably a lot of young teenage girls would like to have a copy of that too.
Well,
Maybe.
get their names.
I work at a private school.
Right.
9th through 12th grade. I just told Joey this today that three of the senior girls at this school have asked for copies of the White Album, and so
I worked for 20 years. I was a technology guy at a private girls' school in Greenwich, Connecticut. So you know, I had my chance.
we did a couple of times.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
there's actually some YouTube videos of us performing there.
Uh-huh.
Greenwich Academy.
We performed at both of these schools dozens and dozens of times. I mean, in my school, I started 10 years ago, I started an open mic
Mhm.
performance. We do 5 shows a year, and Joey came to almost all of them
Yeah, I made it to
for a
most.
long time. And we would play for the kids and play for the faculty there. And it's been fun. It's become an institution at my school. And so, yeah, it's been great. Now he's in Florida. It's hard for me to
It's a little
hard for me to get him up there.
Right.
because-
Yeah, well, that's you guys are doing your part to bridge that generation gap there. See.
They are.
We are. I feel.
Yeah.
Actually, the interesting is that that's a really good point, because I don't know how Joey feels, but our music is folk rock. It goes back,
Right.
generations.
Mhm.
But the kids love it. I mean, the kids
Yeah.
love our acoustic music. I mean, they really do. And that's that's really satisfying and nice to know that we can get up and do Daybreak and If Love's in Season, which I did just this in February, and really, really, get a sense that they appreciate that kind of music,
Right.
despite all of the, what's going on in modern music today, which is couldn't be more different.
Right. Well, you know what I say about that is music like that is timeless, and it's going to reach across generations. And that's why you've got younger people liking it, and that's with the internet. The advent of the internet, people started looking for these kind of hidden, obscured gems. And like you said, people hear and they know good music. I mean, no matter how old,
It's like, I mean, I love it that, kids today are like loving Led Zeppelin and, Pink Floyd, the classic
right,
things,
right,
and appreciating the musicianship
right,
that existed before people like Kanye West came along.
hmm
What was interesting was that a number of years ago, we started hearing from Japan.
Yeah.
People somehow found out how to contact us. And, we heard there was there were Japanese bands doing Daybreak in their live shows.
Right.
And I mean, it just blew my mind,
It's great.
Still get, emails from people, from Japanese people that just say, we love you guys and da, da, da. And that kind of blows my
Right.
mind, that,
Look, the music doesn't go away.
yeah, no.
You know what I'm saying? It
Yeah.
just never goes away. And the fact that we never really had big hits. I mean, we
No.
had regional hits. Barnstormer was a hit. Alaska Bloodline was the #1 song in Alaska, but we never really broke through. But it still it sort of blows my mind
Yeah.
that we still there's an audience out there
Yeah,
for
because
this.
there are people who are hearing it and liking it
Right.
enough to contact us.
Well, yeah, like myself. I mean, and what you just said a little bit ago, Joe, about the retro. You hear that word a lot. But that's what there's a lot of current bands that are sounding a lot like classic rock and a lot like bands from
Yeah.
10, 20, 30 years ago or whatever. So they know the quality. They know.
Oh, yeah, no, and that's good to know, because there is so much crap out there now that's
Yeah, tell me about it.
just popular music.
I made the mistake of trying to watch some of the Grammys a couple of weeks ago when I was back in Connecticut.
So I won't watch
I
it.
didn't know a single artist, and I didn't understand a single freaking thing they were talking about. It was, I didn't stay on very long with anyone.
No, there is, but there are. I
No,
mean,
there's some
people like John Mayer,
no, very talented guy.
who, the talent does get, surface, and, I
Yeah.
think Swift has, for all the dumping on her that people do, she's, I think, writing, decent music.
Yeah.
So is
There's a whole there's a whole new, well, I wouldn't say new, it's been around for a few years, folk movement.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
here UK, in different pockets around the world too.
Yeah.
That is that's really good stuff. I mean, it's really if you ever get a chance to check out any, and again, I got this one compilation, and it's got some really quality stuff on there, and you can see it's like they kind of do an old retro sound, but with a modern feel to it.
Yeah.
It's really unique.
It is.
so there's hope,
Yeah.
One station on my Sirius, my car, and my, the Sirius radio that is, I don't even know what it is, but it's exactly that kind of music. It's new music. It's acoustic.
Yes.
Very much calls back to our era with somewhat of a modern, well, because you're using modern recording techniques and you're using some instruments that sound a little bit more modern than they did when we did a lot of our stuff. But you're absolutely right. I mean, it is totally harking back to basically just good folk music, and
Right.
It's singer-songwriter music. It's really
There
good.
you,
I love it that my youngest son, Jeff, who is an incredible musician, songwriter, is the one who, you know, tells me about, he listens to that stuff all the time. And every
Yeah.
time I go visit him, he's playing a record of someone. I go, oh, that's great. Who is that? You know?
uh-huh.
So he's my conduit to that
There
stuff.
there you go. Well, getting back to the to your music, tell the story behind the song Alaska Bloodline.
Sure. Goodness, here we go. Um, you know, I lived in Alaska for 2.5 years. My dad was stationed up there, and it had a lasting impact on me. And so fast forward, you know, you remember those kind of things, those influences that are part of it. Joe and I are in New York. We're pursuing our career as songwriters and singers. We had a deal with Don Kirshner and the Tokens, who were our producers at that time. And somewhere along the line, I don't remember exactly, certainly early on in our relationship with them, I just came up with this idea of a song about Alaska. And I mean, well, here's the cool thing about it. So I wrote this song. We went into our initial recording experience with Kirshner Entertainment and the Tokens, is we did 4 songs. We went into a studio, correct me if I'm wrong about any of this, and we recorded Alaska Bloodline, and it was released as a single on Epic Records. So our first kind of major deal was a single deal with Epic Records, with a song called San Andreas
San
Practice
Andreas
Zone Blues
Practice
on
Zone
the other side, right? And I don't have any idea how well it did or whatever, but it certainly established us. Then that led to a album deal with RCA Records, and we recorded the song again on RCA with Mitch Margot of the Tokens, who did the string arrangements on that song. So that's recording number 2. Okay. Fast forward to another couple of years, and this is all in the 70s. And our very dear friend Eumir Deodato, who is before, actually this is before, I take that back. It was before the RCA record was
That's what I thought,
released.
yeah.
He wanted to lure us away from RCA to MCA Records, which was his record company at the time. So he was in recording an album for MCA, and he called us in. He said, "Let's do 2 songs." So we did Alaska Bloodline again, which is my favorite recording of it, with Deodato strings, and we did a song called "It's Your Chance," which was a song I wrote at Williams, and Joe and I performed on national television on a Dick Clark special called Dick Clark Presents the Future Stars, which
Okay.
was I would kill to have a copy of this. It was a national network show. We did "It's Your Chance" on that. So long story short, Alaska Bloodline was recorded 3 times, twice released, first as a single on Epic, secondly as an album cover on RCA, and then Joe and I did, according at least my favorite version of the 3, which was Deodato's arrangement of it was slightly different than, and I think he had the right instincts about, because he had something to do with the chorus. He told us to repeat the chorus in places that we didn't do before. He had the right instincts about that song, and so we recorded that, and nobody else ever heard it. And it's one of my favorite songs. And when Joe and I released Destiny, a self-released CD, what, 4 years ago, 5 years ago? Yeah, it's on that. It's on that record.
Okay.
It's the Deodato version of that record. But I can tell you that we went up to Alaska 3 times in support of that hit, and it was just experiences that I think, if Joey would agree with me, were amazing, because it was a song that everybody knew up there. And I don't know if that answers your question, but it has a long, complicated history of that song.
Yeah, yeah.
And it did give us the entree to go up and play there in Alaska and on those 3 separate occasions. And It
Well,
gave
the-
us a little bit of notoriety, you know, we were
Oh, yeah.
the guys that did that song, so.
Well, the cool thing is if you Google, even today, I might be wrong, but I mean, the experiences that I've had, if you just Google songs about Alaska, right? So you get a dozen songs that come up, and usually Alaska Bloodline's one of them.
Yeah, because there's not that many. You're right. You're right.
Does that
Well,
help?
you mentioned Don Kirshner. And I can remember Don Kirshner's rock concert.
Yeah, yeah. We were with him in that era.
Watching that, yeah. I won't say how long.
We got an audition with him through a mutual friend. That was rough. That was Bob.
Oh, Bob, you could tell.
Bob, you could tell, yeah. And we ended up signing with Donnie. It was an interesting experience. I mean, it really was. Wally Gold, who was his producer, and the Tokens were on staff there as producers, and that's how we ended up with him. And so it was, I don't know, it was an interesting experience. He gave us an opportunity, no question about it. He gave us an opportunity.
So he worked with you on that 76 album too, right? He helped you with it.
The Joe and Bing album with the hang gliders on the cover.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, the Tokens were the hands-on guys, and they worked very slowly. We were a little frustrated by that because our deal with RCA was for 5 one-year options, and it took almost a year to record the album because basically at the pace at which they worked. We loved working with them, but we were always kind of going, can't we, do more than one song a week or a month, So kind of what happened was that at the end of the first year, the album was basically just released, and RCA didn't really have any sense of how well it was going to sell. And oh, by the way, we've just signed Hall and Oates, RCA.
Right.
So, we'll never know, but that
Yeah, it's hard to say.
all we can tell you is that RCA didn't pick up the option for the second year, and there was some money involved. They would pay Don Kirshner to renew the contract.
Right.
So we kind of got caught, I think, in a time crunch as much as anything.
I mean, technically speaking, and I'll just go on record as saying this, they released a song off our album. Alaska Bloodline regionally did fine. Again, it ended up the #1 hit in Alaska, #1 song in Alaska for a while. But from our RCA album, they released a song called Barnstormer, which is a very beautiful song. And Joe and I, really spent a lot of time working on this song. The decision was made, and this is technical, and I could be completely wrong. And it's just been something that it's just irked me for years and years and years. Is that this was a big deal, releasing our first single off an album. It wasn't the most commercial song. There was a song called Old Elizabeth that was way more commercial than this song, but this song was more like us.
Yeah,
and I get it.
I would make that point.
And so we released Barnstormer, but they decided along the way, and this gets technical, to take out the second chorus of the song. And I was not for that. Because of the time that would make the song longer.
Right.
And I quite frankly, I will go to my grave feeling that was a mistake. That was a mistake to do that, because it's somehow, even to this day, when I listen to that song, I trip every time that I'm missing the chorus, the second chorus of that song. And I could, like I said, this is just me personally. I think that was a mistake. And Joey and I, this was our careers. We're resting on the success of this single.
Right.
It died.
Yeah.
It
Well,
died.
that reminds me the RCA going with Hall and Oates. There are similar stories throughout the industry, I know, throughout the years. Are either one of you familiar with Alzo Fronte?
No, I'm
No, me either.
Italian New Yorker, Alzo Fronte, Fronte. One of those that didn't ever make it. He should have, singer-songwriter. I did if you look at my channel, did a tribute to him. He passed away a few years ago. Anyway, he was dealing with Clive Davis.
Oh.
And Clive decided to go with Barry Manilow,
Yes.
of all
Wow.
people, you know. So it kind of reminds me of your story, instead of Alzo. And you know, of course, he was really distraught. And but yeah, check it out, or I'll send you the link. I had his brother and one-time manager on there and talking about his life. So it was a nice tribute to him.
My takeaway from the whole thing was that there was such a random element.
Yeah.
And, you know, I didn't always feel that the people who were succeeding in the music business were necessarily the best musicians. There was just some, you know, magical confluence of something that just established this person as opposed to that person. You
Right.
know, and you know, it wasn't a fair fight ever, you know, and we were actually managed by Sid Bernstein.
I know.
And that was amazing because he's, you know, he's managing us. He's also managing the Rascals. He's managing Phoebe Snow.
He
He's
brought the
managing
Beatles to this
Laura
country.
Nero. You know, I mean, he's got all
Yeah,
these
so-
other acts.
You know that this is a really good point. Joey and I are in Williams College, right? This is a story that part of our, at some point, somebody writes our story. This has got to be an ad chapter. So we, through a connection that Joey had, we got an audition for the Tonight Show. We're at Williams College. We got an audition for the Tonight Show. So we drive down to the city.
Well, you drove down to the city. I took a bus.
You took a bus, okay? No matter what,
Snowstorm.
we got to New York, and we go into this audition room, and there are people seated in there, and we sing, I don't know, Love
sure-
in
I'm
Season,
sure we
or
sang
something. We sing
Daybreak,
2 or 3
okay.
songs, and just 2 of us on guitars on a mic, and we leave, and we go back to Williams. That night, at 9 or 10 o'clock or something, we get a call from Sid Bernstein.
Okay.
Again, if there's a more famous manager in the music business, you tell me who that is, right? And Sid called and talked to us for a while on the phone. He said how much he loved our songs and so on. And basically, the long short of it was that we said, hey, we're in college right now. It's really hard. And he said to us, when you're through with college, come see me. And that's what we did. And it's a great story.
Yeah. Well, and I'm also going to add that Deodato was constantly telling us, you guys should drop out of college and strike while the iron is hot.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, having just been kicked out of college, spent 3 years in the Army and back in college and happy as hell to be there, I'm not about to leave college, you know, on this, you know, quest for.
Yeah, and the
You know,
thing is, I never remember Sid saying that.
No,
though.
Sid never did.
Sid said-
Deodato did.
Yeah,
Eumir did.
Deodato did, but Sid
Constantly
said,
telling us that.
graduate and come see me. And that's exactly what we did. And then he signed with him. He became our manager.
You know, of course, there's a lot of luck that goes into,
Oh,
you know, music, but timing is so important too. Like
Sure.
talking about
Yeah.
being at the right place, the right time, the right circumstances. Yeah, you know, I mean,
And popular music at this point is like, again, Led Zeppelin, and it was
Yeah.
not really folky.
Right,
But at
right.
some point, I remember I was in Boston. I don't know if we were together, but I'm driving across the Charles River and I hear America doing Horse with No Name.
Yeah.
And I'm
Oh,
going,
yeah.
holy cow, this is us.
This is us. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do too. I remember hearing them.
So
really
we're
encouraging.
back.
You know, I was going to ask you about that. Were there comparisons made?
Yes. Oh, yeah. All the time.
How about
We
another
like
one?
their songs, you know, I
another
love
one-
that. We
Another
did.
one I thought of was how about Seals and Crofts?
Definitely.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah, we did their songs as well.
Yeah.
We were compared with them. We were compared with America. We were compared with the Eagles. We were compared with a number of songs. And Joey's right. It did. The music changed in our favor in a lot of ways during the 70s. So, yeah, America was a big influence. No
Yeah,
question
and
about it.
again, these are like military, the brats who
Right,
who
right,
got
we
together
were.
in England, you know,
Like-
they
Right.
met in England. And,
Exactly.
and this
Exactly.
is America,
Uh-huh.
us, you know.
Yeah. George Martin. You know, George Martin did their.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Exactly. So.
We always thought it would be funny if we could be the opening act for America and we would just come out and do other songs. I still think that
The
was
closest we ever got was opening for Laura De Niro. I mean,
No, Laura
Laura
De
Niro, yeah.
well, we opened.
Well, we
England Dan
opened
and
for-
John Ford Coley. I think.
Yeah,
that was
England
more
and John
apropos.
Cola, we opened for, who did we open
Yeah, yeah. There's
last
another
year?
one. Yeah.
Singer,
Oh,
guitar player,
Kenny Rankin.
Kenny Rankin.
You opened for him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But, we had numerous, brushes with people who went on to be successful.
Well,
or
we're
who
in
were
our,
already
in our
successful.
genre. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was in our
And I
genre.
remember meeting Felix Cavallari in Sid's office,
Uh-huh.
and another, this is completely out of nowhere, but there was a guy named Don Ciccone, who was the lead singer for the Critters. You remember them?
Yeah.
Mr. Dyingly Sad.
Yeah.
He was doing demos at Sound Ideas Studio. And I'd been up all night and I was just exhausted. So I went in and just lay on the floor of the studio while he was recording vocals, for his big comeback.
Was I there?
I was somewhere, but I just went lying on the floor, hearing this guy doing take after take after take after take of, some choochy little song. And then he ended up being sort of playing with the Four Seasons, singing, Oh, What a Night, the Four Seasons, that was him. Don
Yeah.
Ciccone singing that, yeah. But anyway,
Yeah.
that's my claim to fame, is lying on the floor. of the studio.
Not much claim to fame,
Yeah.
Joey.
And I said, "Well, Don, maybe you should phrase it.
Well, I want to mention a couple of tracks off of the 76 album that I really like. One of them is Library.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Library, is a song I wrote, that was inspired by a little library up in my family place in the Adirondack Mountains, that Joey and I have a picture of us sitting on the porch of that library, which I
Mhm.
love. Joey's come up there. It's a family place, but he's been there scores and scores of time. Library for me is a very special song, mostly because, well, not mostly, but because the string arrangements, I actually wrote the strings arrangement to that song. And I learned everything I know about writing strings from Deodato. Okay, he taught me everything about how to voice strings and everything else. And I'm most proud of not only the job that Joey and I did performing that song. Did you
Mhm.
play banjo in that?
I play banjo and bass.
And bass. I mean, it's a gorgeous song. I absolutely love that song. But I'm so proud of the way the strings came out on that song, which was which was my arrangement on that. So yeah, that's how it happened. It was inspired by a place in the Adirondacks.
But I love this. This song has such a nice sort of metaphysical feel to it.
Yeah.
Kind
Yeah.
of like, it's a very internal.
And for it to make it sense to you, the place in the Adirondacks is a piece of property, not to get into this, not to belabor it, but was bought by my great grandfather in 1851. And so if you listen to the lyrics, it's all about heritage, it's all about your ancestors and everything else. And everybody up there are all cousins. We're all descended from this one man. Okay. And it's an extraordinary story, really. It's called Brandreth. It's called Brandreth Lake, New York. You can look it up. I mean, you can see it on a map and so on. And so this little library, which is up there, it's got books, has been in there for, decades and decades and decades, was the inspiration of that song. But there's a great picture of the two of us that I have in my, records of it sitting on the front porch of that library.
Oh, okay.
Help.
Right.
I was useful there because the rest of them were also inbred.
Right.
I was like new genes, being brought into the gene pool.
That was my first thought when you said we're all cousins. I was like, okay.
I'm kidding, of course.
I am very happy you like that song though,
Yeah,
because
no,
it's
it's-
actually one of my
No, I
favorites.
like that song too.
It's really
Okay.
a great song.
And then I wanted to hear your take on Ripple in the Water, another one that I like.
Wow. Okay, so another song inspired by the same place. The Ripple in the Water has about 3 movements to it. Gosh, not much more to say except it was inspired also by the lake up there. It's a beautiful lake. It's surrounded by mountains. It's crystal clear. It's never had a motorboat on it. In the 150 years that my family's owned it. And Joey's been up there.
Yeah, and there are loons on the lake.
And there are
you know,
loons on the
to get
lake.
to hear the loons.
Yeah, you hear the loons, which that whole thing. My one regret about that song personally is that we didn't ask Elliot Randall to do the guitar lead at the end, because he would have done a much better lead than I did. But if I had to do it over again, I would say, Elliot, go for it. One of the great guitar players in the world.
Yeah, well, and
And
yeah,
so-
and actually, speaking of the RCA album, because it was produced by the Tokens, they
Mhm.
do all the great players.
Great player.
So Elliot Randall, we all know him, and Steely Dan, and we
Yeah.
had Ayrton, who was a Brazilian percussionist, and who's Steve Gadd played drums
Played
on a bunch of stuff.
drums. Yeah.
Will Lee, we
Will
had
Lee
him
was
playing bass.
Played most of the basses
Eric
on it.
Weisberg came in and did some mandolin or
Did
steel guitar
mandolin,
or
he
something.
did electric, he did slide guitar
Yeah.
on Changing.
Yeah, so
He
we,
did
we had
change.
access to the really good, great studio
With
players,
Great
which
studio players.
again, impressed the hell out of me just hearing how good
Yeah.
these guys were,
Yeah.
which might have even been depressing because they were so good.
Not, but
Uh,
Harry, but then again, it was a great experience, because Harry Lukovsky, Joey mentioned,
Hmm.
was our original producer going way back to the Daybreak album, was a
Hmm.
session violinist,
Yeah.
a first call session violinist in town. And I remember specifically that Harry came in with the string section for Library. And he was there, and I was actually conducting them. And he was helping me make sure that I was, giving him the right cues and so on. And so I have fond memories of recording that song.
And actually, speaking of Harry Lukovsky and going back to Sale, I remember sitting in the studio when he, and I want to say Rick Rowe, that was the guy playing the
Played
flute,
flute.
how
Okay.
he sat there and wrote out their part. I mean, it couldn't have taken him more than 15 minutes, and if you listen to Sale, there's the violin and flute are basically playing together. They're playing a part, and they
Right.
just sat there and without even playing it, they just said, oh, okay.
That's what
yeah,
Deodato
E
did.
flat, E,
But that's what Deodato did.
I know he did, but I wasn't there with Deodato. I don't remember that. I just remember though being so amazed that
Yeah.
you've got these guys that are so good at what they do. And it sounded great. I mean, I don't think they recorded it, and they probably got it, and if not the first take, the second. So the kind of the studio-y part always
Mhm.
impressed me a lot,
Yeah, yeah,
what you could do in the studio.
Right.
Dubbing and just how facile these guys were.
yeah, they knew what they were doing. Man.
Oh, yeah, so
Yeah,
we,
yeah.
we were lucky to have access to them because
Yeah.
of the people that we knew, the Tokens and
Yeah.
Jay Siegel, the guy singing.
Yeah.
Singing the high parts on a lot of songs.
They did some
They were
background-
fun. I mean,
they
they
did
were
some
great
background
guys.
things.
They were great guys. So, they were
Right.
fun.
Right. Well, before we forget, did you want to tell your mamas and papas story?
Oh, well, let's years
Or did
later.
you want?
I'm playing in a kind of a country bluegrass band up in Stamford, Connecticut, and
Okay.
we're invited to play at a birthday party for somebody at the Appowamus Yacht Club, and John Phillips was a friend of the birthday guy. So the mamas and the papas came in to sing on one of our breaks. And at this point, it was John Phillips, Denny Doherty, not
Mhm.
Michelle Phillips, but Mackenzie Phillips, of course, the daughter, and Spanky McFarland in place of Mama Cass, who was
Is that right?
with us. And they were getting ready to sing, and I said, why don't you guys use our PA system?
Uh-huh.
Because, people can't hear you. From my experience, they're gonna just start talking to each other and ignore you. And I guess it was Mackenzie Phillips. I can't tell you exactly what she said, but basically it was like.
And here,
I know.
tell her, Joey.
I just said, they're gonna, she just said, fuck them. Oh, okay, but anyway, so I got to just sit there and listen to them, being the mamas, the papas, and I went up to John Phillips afterwards. I just said, I'm just such a huge fan, and
Oh my God.
I've been following you since you were a
My,
journeyman.
yeah, the Journeyman, he was, oh my
I mean,
God,
that-
that group was so amazing.
Remember, there was the third album.
Yeah, it was a live album, right?
No, this live was their second. This
That was
the third album when they did, the Don't know where, da, da, da,
What's the
da,
cover?
da, da. It's
got
great. It's, I mean, the guy who wrote the liner notes was just gushing over how
Yeah.
lucky they were to have him.
I have the live.
Um,
Do I have the
yeah.
photo album?
My other brother, Bill, he was one of them. right?
Okay, I
Yeah,
guess I do,
just-
yeah.
The harmonies and the production, it was, the folk music had been
I know, it was
just,
taken
you
to a
know,
whole different level.
taken, yeah. And
Yeah.
It was
level.
Frank
And-
Weber.
we were listening to that, with our, both of our ears, because that was kind of what we were, in our way, we were trying to do the same thing, was move from the Kingston trio to something that was more,
In the early years.
harmonic, a little bit more interesting melodically, but totally based on the folk, genre, which is what I got started with.
Yeah. Well, talk about playing some of the live shows that you played, I guess after the 76 album, because you guys were still performing, right?
Oh, absolutely. Well, Sid, we have deals. We went to, my goodness, that's a great question. First of all, we did some really cool television shows. We did some local shows in New York, but we did 2 national network shows at the time where they were very big. We did the afternoon show.
Dinah Shore, we were on the
Dinah
Dinah
Shore, when
show.
she was the number 1 afternoon show in America on CBS, we did her show. And we did Barnstormer on that show. I would kill for
I was
tapes.
gonna say, that's not floating around YouTube
They were
anymore.
sitting on Valerie Provine. It was sitting
No,
next to-
But I'll never forget, Sid called us in, Sid Bernstein called us in to his office, and who should walk in there but wait,
Sounds like who?
no, when we did the,
Dick Clark?
yeah, there was, sorry. Who should walk in but Dick Clark, okay? And Dick Clark was marvelous to us, and he was really wonderful, and we turned out after talking that he actually, the girlfriend I had at the time's mother went to the same high school he did, so there was a connection there. And he was basically auditioning us for a show that he was planning to produce on ABC, a national show called Dick Clark Presents
The Future Star.
Presents the Future Stars.
Okay.
And it was going to be hosted by Gabe Kaplan.
Okay, there's Gabe Cap. Okay. I was gonna ask you how he came into this.
That's how it came. So
Okay,
long story short, fast forward for I guess a few weeks. I don't remember how long it was. Joey and I are flown out with our band to Los Angeles, and our band included Lauren Korovec on bass and Mitch Margot of the Tokens on percussion. And we did the show, and which was a really great experience. We did a lot, it wasn't live, but there are pictures of us after we performed, sitting down with Gabe Kaplan and talking with him. We did Barnstormer?
I think we did.
No,
It's Your Chance. Didn't we do that?
We did It's Your Chance. We did 2 songs. I think we did
I don't remember.
Barnstormer, and then we did It's Your Chance. So we did 2 songs, and that was great. I don't know how much later we were booked on to the Dinah Shore show, and we went out to Los Angeles. They put us up.
I'm pretty sure we did. I thought we did Dinah Shore first.
We could have.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
not
I
really
think
sure
that-
who was first or who was last, but RCA put us up in a nice hotel. The show was fantastic. I guess we did Barnstormer because that was the single.
Yeah, that would be.
And then she brought us over and we talked to her for a while. It was a great experience. And my regret for both of those experiences is that we don't have tapes. And I know they exist, but we don't have tapes of both those performances.
And I'm also going to jump in here and say that in those days, television audio was not, audio was something that they didn't want to be bothered with. Most of the other acts on the Gabe Kaplan Future Stars basically lip synced a recording. We insisted on singing live.
Yeah. And
So it just didn't sound the same.
Yeah,
You had a group with their big fancy recording, and then we had Bing and I,
On
singing
acoustic
into
guitars
these
and a
cheesy
bass.
mics, they did.
And Dick, and to his credit, Dick Clark stopped the recording more than once because he wasn't happy the way it sounded because they weren't miking us properly. I mean,
Oh, really?
literally, we had a live audience of like 300 people, And he came down using language I
Oh,
won't
yeah.
repeat.
Oh, he
Oh
was,
my
he
God,
was like a
the
sailor.
The F-bombs were flying. And in front of
But you know,
people.
it's funny, when we met him the first time, I'm thinking he's just like he is on TV.
Right.
This is
Yeah.
Dick Clark, he's just being Dick Clark, but yeah, he was brutal. When
Oh, he was, show he was producing, he was not happy with the
didn't want
sound.
to get him on my head.
No, he was not happy. He wasn't mad at us.
No,
He was unhappy with the tech guys. He literally stopped the song twice, and we'd come down, I want this effing thing done right. What do you like? And I was sitting in that audience, I'm like, oh my God, what's happening here?
But
So
it'd be interesting to speculate if we had done the same thing, just lip synced a recording of Daybreak, like, would that have changed the future? Who knows? But
well, I think in the long run, people that watched the show back in New York, friends of ours, said it sounded great.
Yeah,
I mean, so it sounded fine.
but it was different.
I
than
just
the-
would kill to have recordings of both of those live television shows or national network shows that we did.
And what I remember from that is that Gabe Kaplan came in with a big hat box that contained his wig. He,
You mean, and we heard it before?
yeah,
before
I
we
mean, I'm
started,
just, there's this guy, with very thinning hair carrying a hat box.
Yeah.
The next time we saw him, he's got this big afro on. Oh, okay. Okay. What aren't you telling us?
He was great. I do have a number of stills from the
Yeah.
show though, and one of us
No,
is,
and I had pictures of us.
yeah,
sitting
Joey
there
and I
together.
sitting next to Gabe and talking to him about after we performed and who we were and what we were doing and so on.
But he got the hat box, Gabe.
And Donna Shores did the same thing. We were brought over after we performed and sat with her and talked with her for a while. So those would be treasures to be able to get recordings of both.
Okay, and I got another little,
Okay.
on that trip,
Which one?
I think it was the Dinah Shore. The Doobie Brothers were playing at the Forum,
That's right.
and when we were at Taft, there was this guy named Jeff Baxter who was 2 years behind us at Taft, who the
Okay.
world now knows as Jeff Skunk
Yeah.
Baxter.
Yeah.
So
Right.
after the show, we went up backstage, and there was Jeff and the rest of the Doobies.
All the doobies there.
And, it's kind of like, I remember we tapped him on the shoulder and he turned around, oh, it was.
I've run into Jeff on a number of
Oh, I have
occasions.
too, yeah.
When I did jingles in New York for a long time, every once in a while, if he was visiting New York, he would come in with all the guitar players that he knows that we do jingles and play on the jingles. And then surprisingly enough, I was waiting to pick up somebody, maybe
I thought it was
you,
your
but I think
sister,
it was
no.
I think it was my daughter and her
Yeah.
husband at Albany Airport just a couple of years ago. And who should walk by but Jeff Baxter? Yeah, so we had a great reunion, say hello. He was there in Albany to play at some gig. I don't remember. But
So anyway.
yeah, so that's our connection with the Doobies. But that was fun. That was a great experience. RCA, to their credit, really took care of us in the short time we were there. I mean, they sent us to up to Canada, and we did some shows up there, radio interviews and so on. And then, like Joey said, sent us out to LA to do a national network television show that was really important, and see the Doobies and so on, and then drive us around limos and so on. They took care of us pretty well, but unfortunately, I think it was Hall & Oates' appearance that pretty much did
Well,
us
yeah,
in.
they were already a proven
Duo.
hit. And, but interestingly enough, I don't know if is that I listened to John Oates's autobiography, and as successful as they were, a lot of what they went through reminded me very
Exactly
much of what
what
we
we
went
did.
through. It's
Exactly
just
right.
they achieved a higher level of success than we did, but it was the same kind of stuff,
Same
dealing
stuff.
with people and having to, play
Bullshit,
for
all the
free and,
BS.
just eat a
Right.
certain amount
All
of,
of BS.
yeah,
Yeah.
and how, one guy succeeds and the other one
Right.
didn't. So it
Well,
was,
it's a shame. It's a shame that there wasn't room for both of you. You know what I mean?
well,
you know.
that's-
I agree. We obviously both of us agree.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's interesting
Oh.
that I think Joey would agree. The most amazing thing is that for me, for all these records that we put out in various, iterations and so on, it doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. I mean,
No.
we still get, a certain amount of attention and response to our music, even to this day. I mean, an active record deal that just come to an end at Machi Records, but I'm fairly confident there'll be something else. And I don't know. I mean, it's great once you put music out there; it just doesn't go away. And obviously, there's no point in having regrets. I mean, we I think we did pretty well.
Oh, yeah.
Considering, and so yeah. I mean, it's just the way it is. I mean, I'm thankful every day that I get a little royalty check every few months from ASCAP or something. But it's not just that. It's the we still get every once in a while we'll get a letter from somebody that says we love your music and or somebody like you who's in touch with us and says hello. And I mean, Joey and I don't have an opportunity to sing and play much anymore because he lives in Florida and I'm still up in Connecticut. But that whole thing of what we did is never going to go away. I mean, it's just.
Well, for me, I mean, this is where I come from. I'm more. I like the hidden gems, and discovering them.
When we were active, the record companies were much more, should we say, influential than they are now.
Right.
They kind of had a tighter grasp on your throat, and were more, we will choose to support these artists and these other people. Just we're not interested in you because we're not going to make $1 bazillion off of you. I think that's changed.
Yeah.
Now anybody can basically.
Right.
You can put it up on the internet, but. So, and that's kind of what, going back to the John Oates thing, was how much their label, which was RCA, kind of, in many cases, screwed them, just by, for businessy sort of stuff. So, that's part of it. But yeah.
I've always been the type, like with singles, talking about, 45 singles. I always listen to the B side. I always prefer the B side to the A side.
Okay.
And usually that's the artist. That is their favorite too.
That's their favorite song, right?
Yeah. The record label's pushing the A side, and the B side a lot of times is a better song, or in my opinion.
Well, it was interesting, going back now to Harry Lakovsky and Mike Brown and the Left Bank and Walk Away Renee. They shopped that song to every record company in the country, and nobody would touch it until they finally got to Decca, I think. The last place they could go to, and they picked it up, and it became a huge smash. I mean, to this day, so it just shows you that, the record companies don't have a lock on, what's good and what isn't. It's
right. I mean, Harry and George took our initial tracks from Daybreak all over New York. I mean, they were pretty connected. I mean, Harry was an extremely well-known studio musician and producer, and George, was a studio owner and so on. So I'm sure they gave us a shot, And I remember Harry telling me we sat there and they had big speakers and Daybreak with the gorgeous Deodato strings, and it just said gorgeous. They were really pretty, and for whatever reasons, they never got the interest that they they never got anybody to commit to us, and that led to the deal in Brazil, and then the rest is history, so I say.
I remember when we were with Kirshner and the Neil Sedaka comeback album came out.
Oh yeah.
Had Laughter in the Rain, and Don Kirshner wanted us to sort of, what should our follow-up single be? And he played the record on the cheesiest record player you've ever heard. I mean, the record was going.
No memory of
Don,
this.
I remember. Yeah, Don Kirshner, the man with the golden ear, and he said, "This is what he's listening to his records on."
Why would he play us that?
He did. He wanted to know what the follow-up single was, and on this record was "Love Will Keep Us Together." But we all went for the immigrant. What is it? There was a time when people were welcome here. I forget what it's called, like the immigrant song or something like that. And we sort of said, we like this song, and none of us sort of jumped on "Love Will Keep Us Together," and then the Captain and Tennille ultimately. So anyway, I thought that was kind of funny that he would be playing. This is the big music guy playing this stuff on a record player that he probably was distorting. It sounded
Well, did you guys want to mention a little bit about some of the other things you've done, the jingle writing? Did you guys enjoy that?
nothing to me, but
Yeah, it was my primary business for years in New York. And Joey and I were no longer pursuing record deals in the city, and he was living out.
yeah,
of
I
the
actually
city.
moved out of New York.
He's living out in New York with his family, starting a family. So I'm in the city, and I had to make a living, and so I won't bore you with all of the mechanics of it, but I met a few people that were in the jingle business in New York in the early '80s. This was really literally '79, '80, something like that when I started, and I managed to build a pretty decent business for 10 years. I mean, I did a lot of jingles and wrote quite a few hits, jingle hits. And so I was pretty successful, and that gave me, the kind of enough money to get married, move out of the city, and live up in Katona next to Joey, not too far away from Joey. But yeah, jingles would very much a part of my history. I can't, and I'm very proud of it. Actually, it's a highly competitive business, as you can imagine, because the money's great. In the early '90s, it dramatically changed because the ad agencies suddenly realized that they didn't have to pay all the jingle singers and jingle writers the money, where they could simply, throw out $25,000 and just grab a song for 6 months that was already produced, a well-known song, and turn that into a jingle. And suddenly, I mean, that was the major issue. There were other issues involved, but suddenly there wasn't as much work out there that was available all through the '80s. The '80s were a great jingle. '70s and '80s, I wasn't doing it in the '70s, although Joey and I did one jingle.
yeah, who was that for?
The First House. We did
Oh
it.
yeah, yeah.
First
Oh,
House.
yeah. A house up for
George
House on
Claybon,
Fire.
when we signed with
Yeah.
Claybon and Lakovsky, they did provide some income for us, other than, we had no other income at the moment, which was a jingle. But I got into it. I really got into it big time, and I worked very hard in the jingle business for 10 or 12 years, and made, was pretty successful. Had some big hits. Ford trucks, the best never rest. That was one of the big ones.
I never heard
That's
of
one of yours.
I wrote that, but just as an example. But it was mostly the writing, but it was mostly just singing. I got pretty good reputation as a singer, so I was hired not by just the people that hired me to write, but I got included in a few jingle companies that would hire me just to sing. And so that was great. But it came to a screeching halt around 92, 93, not just for me, but for a lot of people.
Okay.
And that's when I transitioned into other things, to make a living.
You taught film studies.
Well, that's later. Yeah, film studies at the school that I worked in now. No, I actually got into writing screenplays and into that side of the business. That's a whole different story. I won't bore you with, but I had some success doing that. And it carried me through to the point where I knew that I had to find, and Joey knows this better than anybody, I had to find a job. And because I couldn't rely on either music or film writing to make a living. And I knew I was going to probably get married. The girl I had dated for 4 years. And so long story short is I started looking for a job, and I found this little school up in Kent, Connecticut called Marblewood. I've been there for 22 years. But the good thing is I've been able to do the stuff that we do and continue to write and continue to do creative things while I'm teaching and doing that. And Joey did the same thing at Greenwich Academy. So we both have had similar experiences.
Yeah. And when I moved out, I at a much lower level than Bing. I built a little recording studio in my garage and did a bunch of local commercials. And there's one other point that
Well, you did, I mean, I remember coming up and doing a jingle at your place.
Yeah, no, so I had, I think my biggest account was a grocery store chain called Basics. It was an ongoing thing, and I wrote that, and yeah, we did stuff like that, and Alan Menken, remember, who Alan Menken is?
Yes, yes.
He moved in to the end of my street, and because I was advertising my recording studio, he called me up and he needed to come in and do some demos. And at this point, I didn't know who Alan Menken was. And I sort of said, he's playing piano. Do you think you could come in and work on jingles with me? He said, well, no, I'm actually kind of writing some music for Disney right now, which turned out to be The Little Mermaid. So he didn't need me. But that was, stuff like that happened. And I had Vinnie Martell, who is the guitar player from Vanilla Fudge, came in.
Okay,
He was
right.
writing music, and he came in. He spent a lot of time with me recording his stuff. So I had occasion to bump into people that were in the business, but but again, I wasn't doing any of this at Bing's level. And now I'm playing with this country bluegrass band, and we've got a regular gig. We play every weekend at a restaurant. And not Michael Douglas. One of the Douglas brothers came in, the guy who produced Romance in the Stone, who was at Joel Douglas.
Oh,
And he heard us and he said, I'm putting together this TV special about running and jogging, and it'll be starring Michael Douglas. And, how about doing some music for me? So I wrote a bunch of songs and scored this national running and jogging show that he did. I don't know. I'm sure it was broadcast somewhere. So I was, got to
Tierra del Fuego.
probably someplace where people run.
Where people run.
I think my hand in, but it was, but I'm gonna say that, playing with this bluegrass band, it was a struggle. I mean, Bing and I while we were trying to break in, we were so many times had to go play for somebody, and for no money, but somebody, so and so might be there. Clive Davis might be there.
Right.
And I just remember the night we played at that place, and then drove back up to Williams in the snowstorm, where we got stranded on the Taconic.
Oh, we were playing a club in upper New York.
Yeah, and it was one of these things where
Okay.
We played up, yeah.
it was somebody might be there, and it's just like you're constantly having to just, it to me, it took the fun out of it. I mean, it just because,
Yeah.
Well, sleeping in my old piggy car.
Sleeping in the car.
Parkway, snowed into a bank.
Yeah.
State police coming by.
Was that one of the weirdest shows that you did? Who did you what was the fewest number of people you ever played for?
Wow. That would depend. You mean like an official gig, or just, I mean?
Well, this show I think would rank, because what I remember, when your mother and your sisters came down to hear us, it was this small little club uptown, and it had one of these like smart ass, MCs, and he would do a little bit. Oh shit, I just remembered another. But basically, our intro, if he was going to something, and they said, and speaking of shit, our next act, that was us. So, that kind of said.
I don't remember
No,
that.
I do. This is what I'm thinking. I'm getting out of this
Speaking.
law school, come back and dance office. So subsequently, we spent the night in the car. We played at, was it the Improv or Catch a Rising
Oh,
Star?
we played Catch a Rising Star, the Improv.
Well,
We played some big clubs.
But yes, but
Very
the
good clubs.
night I'm remembering is, we went on about 1 o'clock right after Andy Kaufman.
No, that was not the Improv. That
Well, it
was
Catch a Rising
Catch a
Star.
Rising
All right,
Star.
it's one of those things. Catch a Rising Star, and he comes out and does his Andy Kaufman thing, playing the congas and then lip syncing on the street where you live. And then we come out and we're doing with our guitars, Daybreak, and I just thought this is, and at that point the audience was so jaded, I just thought.
Well, it was the wrong club.
Well,
Totally
but you asked the question.
Yeah, I did.
That would be one of the really horrendous ones.
I don't think, I mean, that we had as many of those typical experiences that anybody coming into business had, playing at the wrong place.
But,
I mean, but we also had some great,
Well,
Catch a Rising Star, and I mean, not Catch a Rising Star, but was the other two.
well, we played at the
played two-
Improv, but there was one
No.
on Bleecker Street.
Shoot. There were a couple of really good club.
We had a week-long gig at someplace on Bleecker Street.
I don't remember it.
Again, but the opposite to that was, I was thinking about this the other day, we played up at Middlebury College. This is when we're back at Williams. And we went up to play at Middlebury. And we were in the student union, this big open space. It was just the two of us standing there with hundreds of students, just literally sitting around us in a complete circle. We had no PA, no microphones,
Right.
and it was like music, playing in the
It
round.
was heaven though.
And,
Yeah,
I thought we killed it. I mean, we were just.
We did. I mean, we did that.
It
We
was
did that.
unbelievable. And that was our kind of modus operandi playing in colleges is
Yeah.
stuff like that. And that's when I thought, we're really good at this.
Yeah.
It was our really our for lack of a better word, it was our great training because we had this record that we were passing out, and the word got around, and we played a number of schools all the way from Wheaton College in Boston all the way up to Middlebury. We played at a number of schools, and every single one of them almost. Wheaton wasn't great, but every one of them. But then they're
Oh,
mostly.
Smith, we had.
Smith, we
great
had
relationship with-
multiple concerts at Smith College. They were all magical performances.
Yeah.
I mean, they were just wonderful. And these kids, just sitting down in front of us and listening to our records
Yeah.
and listening to us sing was really, really special. But that was really important also in our, I think, just developing our quote act, unquote,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And how to put that together and how to manage it. So, I mean, Joe and I have been performing in front of people since high school.
Right.
So, I mean, it wasn't anything particularly new to us, but it was at that level with a record and so on. It got more and more and obviously more and more demanding, but every time it was just, magical experiences, really were so much important in our whole history.
yeah. Joe, do you still get nervous before a performance where you play?
No, I don't. No. I mean, I
Yeah.
played actually I've been down here in Florida for 2 years. I retired, almost 2 years ago, but for the last 4 years of my being in Greenwich, I was playing with another band called Cover Story, where we just, covered other groups.
Mhm.
But that didn't answer your question at all, but,
That's all right.
to me, the fun, I mean, a little nervous because to me, when you're going to get up and stand in front of people and play, you're starting from scratch for the most part. And you
Right.
have to build something over the course of the next 3 hours. You have to get your audience to like you. You have to, present, music reasonably well. And
Yeah.
you have to put the act over. And the fact that you're always starting at zero,
Mhm.
there's a certain amount of trepidation is what if this particular night, for whatever the reason, they don't like us.
Yeah.
And that to me is the fascinating, exciting part of music and the performance is the music is giving you something to do while you're in front of these people, getting them to like you.
Right. Right.
And, I love that, especially when it's going well.
Well, especially
they're
if
like
you
just-
think about all of our performances. I mean, just
Yeah.
starting at Taft all
Yeah.
the way through our entire career, how many times have we performed in front of
Oh,
people?
yeah, but that Taft was,
Hundreds of times.
that's when it started. I remember the first time we played at Taft.
Yeah.
There would be a Saturday night movie in the auditorium.
Right.
And a couple of weeks before that, some other guys had gotten up and sung. They called themselves the Housatonic Valley Boys. The Housatonic. So we said, "Oh, we got to do this." So we learned a bunch of songs. We had to audition for the music director, so he would let us get up in front of the screen. And I was really nervous.
Mhm.
That was the first time we'd been up and performing for people. And we did, a couple of songs, and then I didn't have a solo, but our encore, I had to actually sing by myself, with the group, but it was like Long Black Rifle, remember?
Sort of.
Dying words I reap you.
This is
and-
a Taft.
It's Taft, yeah.
We auditioned.
We auditioned for Mr. Young. Yeah, I remember going there and Oh Miss Mary, I remember,
Oh, Miss Mary,
I remember
yeah.
the songs we did, but yeah, I was really nervous about that. And, seemed to go okay, they liked us. And then, gradually you acquire the confidence that what you're doing sounds good. And And now, I mean, I love doing it, I mean, I not so, the music is a huge part of it, but like I say, it's getting up in front of people and creating this act that,
Right.
and,
So you would,
involving the audience. To me, that's
that's
what I
it.
get off on.
Make, making that connection, making
Yes,
that
getting the audience to be involved in the performance, talking to them. Here's a song you're gonna like, da, da,
Right.
da, because an audience wants to like the performers.
right. Yeah.
That's truism, I believe.
Yeah.
Want to like you, so just give them what they want.
There you go. There you go. All right, guys. Well, anything else you'd like to add?
I think I can't even, I was thinking just a second ago how much ground we've covered here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like on YouTube, you said something about YouTube. There are videos of us performing live. I know the Greenwich Academy show.
Okay.
Us, if you probably can go to YouTube and Google Joe and Bing at Greenwich Academy.
Yes.
Place, and that might be the only one.
Yeah,
actually.
I don't know. Who knows?
I don't
Maybe these Japanese guys.
I know, we keep on the internet.
Yeah.
Well, did you get what you needed from us?
Yeah. Yes, I did. I sure did. And I appreciate you guys sharing with me and thinking back and dusting off some of those cobwebs up there.
I mean, we could just talk about crazy stuff we've done for
Yeah,
hours.
Joe could go on for 8 hours. I mean,
Lots of stuff. It's inappropriate, and just, the crazy stuff that happens to you when you're out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you did share. I like the Dick Clark story. I like to hear things like that that most people maybe haven't shared before. They don't hear those kind of behind the scenes type stories.
At one point, I remember we ran into, he was producing something and we had to ask him about something. We were in the city and we came into a studio where he was working. We talked to him and, he was happy to see us, and I forget what it was all about, but
But he's just like he is on
Yeah, exactly.
American Bandstand until he starts cussing out his production crew.
That's
So
funny.
anyway, I thought about when we talked today. I don't think I shanked anything.
You didn't do my last name.
Some bad shots today, but
Okay, good.
I didn't shank.
You did.
Some other stuff,
Yeah, I know. So-
thank you for
thanks for having us.
reaching out. We appreciate it.
Oh yeah. It's
Just out of curiosity, what what do you do with these interviews? I mean, is there anything that we should know about, or is
No.
this?
Usually the following weekend. Well, if this was on a Saturday or Sunday, I would the following weekend do the editing, and it's usually about a week or a week and a nickel or so that I'll have it posted.
You sent me the link. You did, and I looked at it. To your other, I thought it was a link to the other podcast you've done, or whatever the vlogs or whatever this. I thought you did. I mean, you sent me a link when I went and I saw other people that you had interviewed.
Yes, that's the channel. Yeah, that's yeah. So it usually takes about a week or so, and depending on how busy I am, but what I do is I'll send you the link, both of you guys.
You
And
have
then-
my email address too as well.
I've got Joe's. Did you give me his? Do I have yours?
I said you probably wouldn't be interested in this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Send it to you.
No, yeah, I'll send both of you the link once I've got it edited down, and then you can post it on your social media and let everybody know, let all your friends and family and whoever's interested.
That's great. That's nice to have.
Yeah, it is, and you never know. I mean, this could generate some interest. I'm not going to say it's going to light the world on fire, but I mean,
some Japanese band out there looking.
yeah, right, right.
So,
You never know who you can reach. And my other channel I told you about with all the songs, I get people from all over the world, you know.
really,
Yeah, commenting on there, posting comments and, you know, likes and whatever, whatnot. So yeah, it's a good way. The internet, you know, it's a double-edged sword, you know,
Yeah.
technology, but the good side of it is you can reach a whole lot more people, you know, than you used to be able to. So,
Well, thank
so
you. All right.
yeah, yeah. Well, thank you guys very much. And I'll stay in touch,
Yeah,
you
let's.
know.
let's keep it.
Yeah, do. And like I said, I'll shoot that link to you when I,
Terrific, and I'll get this email address to you right away. I'll just message it to you on the messenger.
okay. That sounds very good.
Okay.
And continued, you know, success to both of you in life and everything that comes your way. All the best, of
Thank
course.
you for your interest, by the way.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's always great.
All right. Well, I'll let you guys disconnect first, leave meeting, because I
Okay.
don't like my image to be the last thing as I fade out. I want it to be
I'm,
good.
I'm poised on the leave button right now.